Hello guys. So here are the solutions to ZAT practice test 5 critical reasoning posted in the Telegram group today. The country of Moravia has severe air pollution, 80% of which is caused by the exhaust fumes of cars. Okay, so cars are the main culprit. In order to reduce the number of cars on the road, the government is raising taxes on the cost of buying and running a car by 20%. Okay, this tax increase therefore will significantly reduce air pollution in Moravia. Okay, so here's the argument. So the argument is a tax increase on buying the car will result in a reduced number of cars on road, which will in turn therefore reduce the pollution in the city. Okay. It is always recommended that you write down the main argument in a concise form like this, maybe as a flow chart, to understand it better, to process it better, and to be able to do some pre-thinking before you start reading the options. So this is the argument: tax increase will cause number of cars to reduce, and also in return the pollution to reduce. Okay. Weaken the argument, which means we have to challenge, question, cast a doubt on, or destroy this equation here. That tax increase might not result in a reduced number of cars. That is what we are looking for. It might not result in reduced number of cars. The government of Moravia is in the process of building a significant number of roadways. So irrelevant, has no impact on the argument, not even related to this equation. By any increase in the number of roadways is not equal to the increase in number of cars or decrease in number of cars necessarily. So there's no direct connection between increase in the number of roadways, and the number of cars. Okay. Moravia is an oil producing country, is able to refine an amount of gasoline sufficient for the needs of its population. So what? Gasoline is again irrelevant. Moravia has had an excellent public transportation system for many years. Well, despite an excellent public transportation for many years, the problem still persists. So, the presence of public transportation system for many years does not weaken the author's argument that a tax increase might reduce the number of cars on road. Okay, so these two are disconnected. 90% of the population of Moravia is very prosperous, okay, and has a substantial amount of disposable income. Now, if 90% of the population has a disposable income, it simply means that a tax increase is unlikely to result in a reduced number of cars. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of money to dispose. Therefore, even if the government increases taxes, they're going to buy the cars all the same. Therefore, option D weakens this equation. Tax increase might not result in reduced number of cars because they have a lot of money to spend or to waste. Okay. In Moravia, cars that emit relatively low levels of pollutants cost 10% less to operate on average than do cars that emit high levels of pollutants. So the tax will increase on every car. It does not matter whether the car pollutes less or more. So this particular fact is again irrelevant to the equation above. All right. Moving on quickly. Consumer income reports produced by the government distinguish between households and families by means of the following definition. So there's a difference between households and families. Okay, what is the difference? A family is a household containing a householder and at least one person related to the householder. Okay, so basically, not every household is a family. There are specific conditions for a household to be called a family. So if this is the superset of all the households, this is the subset of families. These are the households which have a householder and at least one other family member related to the householder. Okay, 1 plus greater than or equal to 1 relative, direct relative of the householder. Okay, so this is the relationship, except for the homeless and people living in group quarters. Most people live in households. Okay, most is greater than 50%. In critical reasoning, these quantifiers are important because they define the domain and range of the statement, and therefore the options have to be considered keeping in mind the mathematical domain ranges. Okay, so most people live in households given these facts. Okay, let's see. According to the definition above, which of the following must be true? So definitely true. Let's see. All householders are members of families. Not really. Householders, household is a superset, family is a subset. Therefore, not all householders are family members. Not necessarily. Wrong. All families include a householder. Yes, it is clearly written. All families include a householder and one more member. Therefore, B has to be correct. All of the people related to a householder form a family. Not all of the people, according to the definition, we don't know. Some people residing in group living quarters are members of the family. There's no direct connection, direct relation between people living in quarters and members of family. Okay. Some homeless people reside in group. Again, there's no direct connection between homeless people and people living in group living quarters. They were two different classes, categories of people presented in the passage. Okay. So the argument says the proportion of manufacturing companies in Alameda that use microelectronics in their manufacturing process increased from 6% in 1979 to 66% in 1990. Okay, so a large percentage of manufacturing firms are now today. Let's say we are sitting in 1990. So from 1979 to 1990, the use of microelectronics in manufacturing industries has increased manifold from 6% to 66%. Okay, many labor leaders say that the introduction of microelectronics is the principal cause of the great increase in unemployment during that period in Alameda. Okay. In actual fact, however, most of the job losses were due to organizational changes. Moreover, according to new figures released by the Labor Department, there were many more people employed in Alameda in the manufacturing industry in 1990 than in 1979. So let's understand the argument. Labor leaders say that microelectronics, MEs, caused unemployment. This is the shorter version of the argument by labor leaders. But author says no. Author's argument, and therefore the main argument of the passage. But no, microelectronics were, not the cause. Organizational changes caused unemployment. That's the main argument. All right. Which of the following, if true, best reconciles the discrepancy between the increase in unemployment and the increase in jobs in manufacturing industry of Alameda? So on the one hand, unemployment increased, but on the other hand, there was also an increase in jobs in the manufacturing industry of Alameda. So we have to reconcile the discrepancy. There has to be an explanation for it. That is what we're looking for. Option A, many products that contain microelectronic components are now assembled completely by machines. Okay, so if this is so, it explains the unemployment part. It explains the unemployment part, but it does not explain then why more people are working in the manufacturing sector today. Does not explain the increase in jobs in the manufacturing sector. Okay. Next, workers involved in the various aspects of manufacturing processes that use microelectronic technology need extensive training. Training is irrelevant. And it does not explain the contradiction. It does not explain either part of it. Okay. It is difficult to evaluate numerically what impact on job security the introduction of microelectronics in the workplace had before 1979, and why do we need to calculate the impact on job security at all? We are not talking about job security. The argument is simply about what? It is about unemployment. The unemployment is higher today, but there has also been a simultaneous increase in the number of jobs in the manufacturing sector. That is the paradox we are trying to resolve here. So job security is again an irrelevant aspect. Goes out. In 1990, over 90% of the jobs in Alameda's manufacturing companies were filled by workers who moved to Alameda. Okay, so these are immigrants. Now that can resolve the paradox. The Alameda's unemployment rates have gone up, but there has also been an increase in the number of jobs in the manufacturing sector. So if these workers are immigrant workers, that explains the situation. The unemployment rates have gone up for the people of Alameda in the city, but still there are more jobs in the manufacturing sector which are being occupied by outside workers. So option D should be the correct answer. Many workers who have retired from manufacturing industry in Alameda since 1979 have not been replaced by younger workers. So that again, that should actually cause a decrease in the number of jobs rather than an increase. So it is kind of contradictory. Also, please note that younger workers or experienced workers, old workers does not really matter. We are talking about a comprehensive view of, we are talking about a comprehensive situation here of employment opportunities in this particular city. Okay. Moving on. Same argument. Which of the following, if true, would most strengthen the labor leaders' claim concerning the manufacturing industry in Alameda? Please don't forget, labor leaders' claim has to be strengthened. And what did they claim? They claimed that microelectronics was the reason behind unemployment, a rise in unemployment. Okay. While the author claims that no, it was not microelectronics, it was organizational changes which caused unemployment. All right. We have to strengthen this claim that it was ultimately microelectronics. Option A, from 1979 to 1990, fewer employees of manufacturing companies in Alameda lost their jobs because of the introduction of microelectronics than did the employees of manufacturing companies in the nearby community of Rockside. Okay. Now please note, option A, if option A is true, fewer employees of manufacturing companies in Alameda lost their jobs than in another city, it simply means that microelectronics might have actually saved their jobs. And if microelectronics saved their jobs, it does not strengthen labor leaders' argument, it weakens the same. Okay. So it is the opposite to what we need. Option B, the figures on the use of microelectronics that were made public are the result of inquiries. So Right to Information Act, where does that come from? Okay, irrelevant. No matter how many inquiries have gone behind the figures, it does not matter. It is not even tangentially related to, remotely related to labor leaders' claim. The organizational changes that led to job losses in all sectors of manufacturing industry were primarily the result of introduction of microelectronics. Oh, so C says microelectronics led to organizational changes. If microelectronics led to organizational changes and author himself admits that organizational changes led to unemployment, so ultimately the reason, the cause behind unemployment was microelectronics, which supports labor leaders' claims, strengthens it. So option C should be the correct answer. Figures on job losses in the manufacturing industry in Alameda for the late 60s and early 70s have not been made available. So data insufficiency is there. If there is data insufficiency, it neither weakens nor strengthens labor leaders' claim. It has no impact because we don't have any clarity. We don't have conclusive data. A few jobs in the manufacturing sector in Alameda could have been saved if workers had been willing to become knowledgeable in microelectronics. Well, that does not mean microelectronics is the reason behind unemployment, because it is written a few jobs could have been saved, only a few, but that does not justify the claim that microelectronics is responsible for the rise in unemployment figures. That rise is severe, and even if a few jobs, we don't know how many, 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe 3% or 2% or 5% of the jobs could have been saved, that does not support the conclusion or labor leaders claim that microelectronics was the primary cause behind unemployment. Okay, this is too little to support the claim, maybe too little to support the claim. We don't know how few. Though E would be the second best option. If C were not available, we would go with E because it does support, strengthen labor leaders' claim to some extent, but not to the extent that C does. Okay. The number of musicians employed to play accompaniment for radio and television commercials has sharply decreased over the past 10 years. All right. This has occurred even though the number of commercials produced each year has not significantly changed over the last 10 years. So number of commercials is the same, but the number of musicians employed in these commercials decreased. So which of the following, if it occurred during the last 10 years, would contribute least, don't forget, to an explanation of the words, least contribution. Let's find out the options which could contribute to this fact, which might have brought about this situation, and eliminate all such options. Let's see. The type of music most popular for use in commercials has changed from a type that requires a large number of instruments to a type that requires very few instruments. Okay. So the number of instruments used in commercials has decreased, which can explain why the musicians have also decreased, because there's a, now there are fewer instruments to be played. Obviously, there will be fewer musicians. So it explains. Therefore, eliminated. There has been an increase in the number of commercials that use only the spoken word and sound effects rather than musical accompaniment. It directly explains why there are no musicians or there are fewer musicians today. Commercials do not need musicians in the first place. So this also explains, therefore eliminated. There has been an increase in the number of commercials that use synthesizer, an instrument on which one musician can reproduce the sound of many musicians playing together. So, okay. So now, over the years, we have new technology, and now one musician is equal to many. He can play the role of many musicians. So obviously the number of musicians employed would decrease. It also explains. There has been an increase in the number of commercials that use pre-recorded music. So musicians are not needed. Okay. There has been an increase in the number of commercials that use musicians just starting in the music industry than experienced musicians. How does that matter? It does not explain why there are fewer musicians today. We might have more inexperienced musicians, but we'll still have musicians in commercials. But the situation is we don't have many musicians these days. So it's not about the kind of musician, the experience level of musicians, it's about number, as simple as that. So E does not explain this fact. Correct answer E. Easy question. Yet explained in detail. Recent audits revealed that Bankcard, a credit service, has erred in calculating the interest it charges its clients. Okay. But Bankcard's chief accountant reasoned that the profits that the company shows would remain unaffected by a revision of its client's credit statements to correct for the previous billing errors, since just as many clients had been overcharged as undercharged. Okay. So this chief accountant, CA's main argument goes thus: the number of upside errors, overcharging errors, the number of overcharging errors is equal to the number of downside errors, undercharged errors. Okay. Therefore, he claims, therefore, no change in profits. So essentially saying if 10 customers have been undercharged, 10 customers have also been overcharged. From this, he concludes that there is no change in the profit statement. Now, there's a simple mathematical error that this guy is making. He's assuming that the number of errors, number of upside errors is equal to number of downside errors, necessarily implies that the amount, total amount of upside errors also equals the amount of downside errors. I mean, if 10 clients have been undercharged and 10 clients have been overcharged, it is not necessary that the amount that they have been overcharged by is the same as the amount that the others have been undercharged by. The amount may vary. Therefore, correct answer. What is the mistake that he's making? Is overlooking the possibility that the amount by which the clients had been overcharged might be greater than the amount by which they had been undercharged. It could be different, as simple as that. The amounts could be different. So C is the answer. Okay. When a person is under intense psychological stress, his cardiovascular response is the same as it is during vigorous physical exercise. Okay. So exercise, let exercise be X. Let psychological stress be Y. Author says both of them lead to same cardio response. Both of them lead to same cardio response, Z. Okay. Psychological stress, therefore, must be beneficial for the heart as vigorous physical exercise is. Wait. From this, he concludes that, therefore, okay, from this, he concludes that stress, therefore, Y is beneficial for heart. Now, there's a jump that the author is making here. We only know that stress induces the same cardiovascular response. From this, he jumps to the conclusion that stress is beneficial for the heart, which means he's assuming that cardiovascular response is a sure index of how beneficial an exercise is for the heart. Therefore, we are looking for an option which connects these two ideas. The jump that the author is making, that is his assumption. What is he assuming? He's assuming that cardiovascular response is a sure index of how beneficial an exercise is for the heart. Let's see if we have such an option. Exercise is an effective means of relieving psychological stress. Wait. Author never tries to draw a comparison between X and Y. There's only a comparison between X and Z, Y and Z, and then he relates the idea of Y to heart benefits. But there's no direct connection between X and Y that he tries to establish. Okay? The body's short-term cardiovascular response to any activity indicates that activity's long-term effect on the body. Wait. Author's argument is not time-bound or time-based. His argument is not term-based, whether it's short-term beneficial or beneficial long-term. He never argues either of the two. Therefore, goes out. C. Cardiovascular response during an activity is an adequate measure, sure index. That's what we are looking for, of how beneficial the activity is for the heart. Absolutely correct. So this was a jump from cardiovascular response to benefit for the heart. That is a jump. So author assumes that cardiovascular response is a sure index of how beneficial the activity is for the heart. Psychological stress can have a positive effect on the body. Tempting choice, but this is not the assumption. This is the conclusion itself. This is what he wants to conclude. And what is assumption? Assumption is something that is there in author's mind, and he uses that idea to arrive at the conclusion, but it can't be the conclusion itself. So this is the conclusion. Our question is, what is he assuming in order to arrive at this conclusion? Okay. Vigorous exercise is the most reliable method of maintaining a most reliable. He never says so. He never says so. Also, even if he had maintained that vigorous exercise is the most reliable method, then it would still be the conclusion part, not the assumption part. Okay, good. Residents of an apartment complex are considering two possible plans for collecting recyclable trash. Okay. Plan 1, residents will deposit recyclable trash in municipal dumpster located in the parking lot. Trash will be collected on the 1st and 15th days of each month. Okay, so once a fortnight, parking lot, they will dump their trash there. Second plan, residents will be given individual containers for recyclable trash. The containers will be placed at the curb twice a week for trash collection. So individual containers versus common community containers for trash collection. So there are two plans. Which of the following points raised at a meeting of the residents, if valid, would most favor one of the recycling plans over the other? So one has to be beneficial. So either we are looking for advantages of one plan over the other, or we are looking for disadvantages of one plan to justify the other. Okay. Option A, residents will be required to exercise care in separating recyclable trash from non-recyclable trash. So sorting of recyclable trash and non-recyclable material would be difficult. Wait. In both the plans, it would be difficult. So it does not change a thing. It does not support one plan over the other. This fact does not support or does not favor one plan over the other. Sorting is going to be difficult for both the plans. For trash recycling to be successful, residents must separate recyclable bottles and cans from recyclable paper bottles. Again, if this is the condition, this condition is not going to change whether they adopt plan 1 or plan 2. So this condition does not really favor one plan. Okay. Penalties will be levied against residents who fail to sort their trash correctly. So penalty can be levied in plan 1, plan 2 as well, if they fail to sort their trash correctly. So it's okay. Individual recycling containers will need to be made of strong and durable material. That is something which can be achieved. It's achievable. You can make individual containers of strong and durable material. Also, the community containers to be used in plan 1 should also be ideally made of strong and durable material. Why would you want to make those material of cheap and cheap quality goods or cheap product? So it's okay. Option D does not really favor one plan over the other. Recyclable trash that is allowed to accumulate for 2 weeks will attract rodents. Now that's a nuisance. That's a nuisance. So if plan 1 is adopted, the garbage will accumulate for 2 weeks before it is collected, and it will attract rodents, which is a nuisance. Therefore, plan 1 gets out. Plan 2 should be supported. Option E favors one plan over the other. All right. Next question. In 1990, all of the people who applied for a job at Evco also applied for a job at Radico, and Evco and Radico each offered jobs to half of these applicants. Therefore, every one of these applicants must have been offered a job in 1990. Ridiculous. Obviously, is assuming that there was no overlap between the offers. So if someone was offered a job by Evco, he or she was not offered a job by Radico. That is his assumption. Stupid. Which makes C. Is assuming that none of the applicants was offered a job by both companies. There was no overlap in offers. Okay, easy question. Last question. The geese that gather at the pond of a large corporation create a hazard for executives, this is the problem statement, who use the corporate helicopter. Wow, so it is a rich corporate, maybe we are talking about RIL here, whose landing site is 40 feet away from the pad. So problem is geese. They create a problem. To solve the problem, the corporation plans to import a large number of herding dogs to keep the geese away from the helicopter. Okay, so that's the plan. Bring dogs to drive the geese away. It sounds, to me, a ridiculous plan, but then okay, we are not doing decision making here, so we are not going to assess the validity or the practicality of the plan here. Let's first read the question. What is asked of us? Which of the following, if a realistic possibility, would cast the most serious doubt on the prospects of success of the corporation's plan? Okay, let's see. The dogs will form an uncontrollable pack. Okay, so you are replacing one menace by another. You are replacing geese by dogs. So you are creating a nuisance in order to avoid one. Now, clearly, this is a failure of the plan. Option A could be the correct answer. Option B, the dogs will require training. Now, that will not lead to failure of the plan. Dogs, if they need training, training can be done. This is something achievable. Dogs will frighten away foxes that prey on old and sick geese. Okay, let's do a cost benefit analysis. These dogs are going to guide or drive geese away, all of them. But they are also going to drive away foxes, which prey particularly on old and sick geese. But this set of geese is already being chased away by dogs. So even if we don't have foxes anymore, it does not really matter. So cost benefit, on the basis of cost benefit analysis, dogs will eventually be able to drive away all the geese. So it's okay. It does not cause failure of the plan. It will be necessary to keep the dogs in quarantine for 30 days after importing them. So what, the plan can be implemented after 30 days. It's okay. Nobody, nowhere in the argument is it mentioned that the plan has to be implemented immediately, or there is a threat to someone's life, something like that. So there's no sense of immediacy in the plan. Some of the geese will move to the pond of another corporation in order to avoid this. So that is their problem. That is not your problem. The plan was to drive away geese from your pond and make the environment safe for your executives, and not to take care of the entire community and also take care of the adjoining corporation. So E does not make plan a failure. I hope you enjoyed the exercise, guys. Please hit a like button if you did, and share the video as much as you can. Thank you very much. Keep learning, keep enjoying. Bye bye.